They got, yeah, they have well-designed homes. They do have high rates of sexual harassment. Yeah, tougher society to be a woman. Yeah, Ari had a really rosy ideal of Japan, and then she studied abroad or did an internship there, and she was like, "Yeah, it's not. I mean, they definitely don't treat women super well. It's like it's fucking." But she wasn't harassing them. I'm not saying it, but it was just like she could tell. It was like it was, it's not the same treatment.
Actually, controversial side note.
What did Ari do for work in Japan? She did industrial design, like designing packaging and like 3D models of products. It's cool. She did that. It was sick.
Here, Japanese housing. Japan, and Tokyo in particular, is often praised for its affordable.
You guys might know, if any of you are Yard viewers, she did the packaging and thing for the Amaranth Pocket Pussy. If you want to know, they like needed someone and they got her last minute. I was like, Ari, can you do this? We need someone to design the package. And she made the whole fucking design in the box and everything. They paid well. So Ari crushed it. That's a legacy. That's the thing you just might know that she did. But she doesn't do that. I mean, she doesn't do industrial design. She does cosplay stuff now, but she still got those skills. She did, you know how I did that stream recently? Maybe you didn't, but I did a stream recently where I tried to learn Blender and make a Glock. I spent like 20 minutes learning how to do Blender and make a Glock. She's actually watched Blender YouTube tutorials every single night for, I don't know, 3 weeks, a month, and is now really good at Blender. And now she 3D prints things that she makes herself, and she's like, it's cool. She's crazy. I'm a wife guy. Let me tell you.
Housing, an incredible feat considering that despite all of the challenges we've already explored in this video, it's still the largest and most productive metropolitan area in the world. Despite that though,
me and Chance the Rapper get along. Let me just say that. I've been listening to a lot of Chance the Rapper lately.
Including those that are in countries that are poorer overall. The way that they've achieved this is a great case study into the factors that determine the price in an economic market. One thing the country has got right over cities that are notorious for unaffordable housing is that development is a lot less restricted. Housing can be built right alongside offices and factories, and there are few limits on how tall a building can be, so where a freestanding home might exist in a city like Sydney, a dense apartment building would most likely take its place in Tokyo.
Okay.
That has meant that there's an abundance of very cheap housing all over the massive city and all throughout the country.
Hell yeah!
The cost of comparable goods is one of the main things that determines the price of any good. If a Toyota Corolla costs $100,000 but a Honda Civic costs $20,000, then Toyota wouldn't sell too many Corollas because most rational consumers would pick a comparable car that costs $20,000.
I would pay $100,000 for the Honda with one wheel missing. As a lifelong Honda hog, I would never ever betray my kings. Okay?
The same thing would happen if a C-Class Mercedes costs $50,000, but a Civic still costs $20,000.
I would trade a C-Class Mercedes for a Honda.
Get them from point A to point B reliably. So Mercedes would really have to provide some alternative value to justify their car being worth more than 2 times another car that could achieve the same end results. That makes sense for cars, but most major cities around the world fail to provide the equivalent of that Honda Civic, which is cheap basic housing that will reliably provide convenient accommodation to workers, even those on a tight budget.
Rise up RAV4 gang. I probably would have got a RAV4 right after college because it's a pretty good car and it's a good price. And then I heard that Kanye lyric where he says, "What you think I rap for, to push a fucking RAV4?" And then I knew I could never buy it. It was a different era of Kanye, and I really respected the man, and I did not want that. I'm only like half joking. I really like, once I heard that lyric, a RAV4 was off the table. But now I guess RAV4 holders, you hodled through the Kanye depression, and now you're actually looking like the right people on the other side. You're actually coming out on the other side smarter, because he really, that was diamond hands of you.
Zoning laws and the huge value of land close to city centres means that it's just not worth it to build cheap housing, because expensive luxury apartments or freestanding homes would sell just as
I know that I'm getting off topic, but I would love to have diagrams like this for Marketing Mondays. By the way, shout out to Erickson. She did a fucking killer job editing the last video. He added a bunch of cool things like this, but like, this is what I want. I think this adds a lot to what is being said.
as well, and make more money. And in turn, the reason that they will sell so well is because people don't have any other option. Tokyo, with its loose regulations around zoning and development, has an abundance of cheap housing, which in turn pulls down the price of more premium options as well, because it gives buyers a cheaper comparable good. Another factor that determines price, which is particularly important to a lot of unaffordable homes around the world today, is the expectation of future value.
Yeah.
Tokyo, and by extension the rest of Japan, was not always making headlines for its comparatively affordable housing. Quite the opposite. It once had some of the most expensive real estate on the planet. At the height of the Japanese real estate bubble, a 10,000 yen note, worth around $200 today, would be worth less than the ground it would cover if it was laid on the streets of central Tokyo. The Imperial Palace at the heart of the city was said to be worth more than all of the real estate in California combined.
I was just going to say that. That's a very common anecdote. I've heard that many, many times in places. The Imperial Palace is worth more than all of the real estate in California, which is, you know, it was absurd. They had one of the craziest real estate bubbles ever. There was like 4 Japanese real estate companies in the top 10 companies worldwide. Instead of like Apple, Microsoft, Google, whatever, it was like Japan Real Estate Trust, Japan Real Estate Bank. I mean, it was crazy. It was 1989. It's like a really weird time if you look at it.
Which even back then was not a state famous for its affordability. The primary driver of these prices was the expectation that the prices would be even higher in the future. This pressured people to buy either because they were afraid they would miss out on their opportunity to ever be able to afford a home, or because they wanted to profit from future price increases. Eventually, the Asian financial crisis hit the country and burst this bubble as people quickly realised that Tokyo wasn't ever going to be home to 100 million people, like was expected back then, and a surge of housing development was flooding the market with affordable homes. Japan also has incredibly high inheritance taxes, with as much as 55% of someone's estate being taxed by the government for all of the passed down value over the equivalent of around $500,000. Big, expensive
What's funny is a lot of this, you guys, some people are asking what happened. It's a pretty complex topic. I'm not sure I could give you an expert level opinion on it, but there was this thing called the Plaza Accord, which is like around, it's in the late 80s, 1980s, okay? And Japan was doing too well, basically. I'm going to give you the Spark Notes version of it. Japan was doing too well, and so America lil bro'd them and had a meeting, had this Plaza Accord where they're like, hey, we need to agree to raise the value of the yen, which again makes their exports less competitive. And we need to like rebalance the trade here so that you're getting more American goods and we're getting. And Japan agreed. Japan agreed, and then almost immediately they have the Asian financial crisis. So it's like and then ever since then, Japan did not really recover. So it is, I mean, it's not one-to-one. Again, I'm not saying the Plaza Accords 100% really caused this, but it was like Japan was riding real fucking high, and post Plaza Accord, they immediately had trouble because the yen got rebalanced in value. They were kind of artificially making it low so their exports were better. If your currency is cheap, your exports are more competitive. And so it's just a funny little quirk of history that like this meeting happened. And the reason I read about it was in context of China, which is like they have studied the Plaza Accords and they will never let that happen to them. Like China, if one thing, is very well aware of how this meeting went down and like what was said and they're like, they're not about it.
Family homes or luxury apartments.
Anyway,
so therefore,
that is a simplification. There's a lot more to it. I mean, I was reading a really long thing about it, but that just like a funny little anecdote from history.
Now seen as a bit of a burden, or at the very least something that is ultimately disposable, like a fancy car. The final factor that is worth mentioning that determines the price of a good like housing is the cost of complementary goods. Petrol is a complementary good to a regular internal combustion car. If petrol cost $100 a litre, there wouldn't be that much demand for cars. To stretch this, one of the most important complementary goods to housing is access to...
If gas cost $100 a gallon, we don't say liter here and we don't say petrol, okay? But if gas cost 100 American dollars a gallon, I would drive down the street, windows down in a Hummer, so everybody know that I'm cool and rich. Okay? I would drive up and down the streets, okay, probably in front of teachers and firemen, and I would have the fucking Hummer full gas guzzling, okay? That's what it's about. That's what society is built for. I need people to know, America built. You could do that now. No, I can't afford it. I can't afford gas as it currently is. This is a fiction. This is a dream I have at night. I just dream of flexing on public service workers.
To high-paying jobs. If workers in a particular region earn significantly more than anywhere else in the world...
How much is gas in LA right now? $102, if you'll believe it. I'm actually asking for a price cut. It's actually pricey down here, bro. I have an oil slick button like a cartoon character and force teachers and other hardworking individuals off the road. Based. So based, dude. I love that. I love that. You're clearly aiming for the right thing. As I always try to teach around here, the goal of life should be accumulating money for the purposes of making other people feel worse. That is what it's about. That's the exact moral philosophy you should have.
The naturally demand for housing in that region
like a dragon hoarding gold.
And people with their higher incomes will be able to afford houses that are worth more. Today, a big reason why Japanese housing is cheap is because wages have been mostly stagnant for 3 decades. This was a very long side note already, but it also must be recognised as it relates to attracting skilled migrants into Japan to try and boost its economic output. Affordable housing might look like a great bonus on the surface, but another reason why this housing is so budget-friendly is because it's tiny and totally lacking the luxuries that most people enjoy in even developing economies around the world. To a skilled migrant looking for a new place to call home, they could get established in a city where they could earn more, live in a nice big house and build wealth for themselves and future generations, or they could live in Japan where they'll be expected to work 80 hours a week, live in a tiny home built wherever there was room, and know that most of what they work for won't make it to their children. There are very strong economic and even moral arguments that what Japan is doing is the right thing here, but for people looking out for their own self-interests, it's just not a particularly enticing place. Not that it matters anyway, because Japan has historically made skilled migration very difficult, and even workers who are able to make it in will find it difficult to integrate into a very insular culture that is not overly fond of outsiders. So if Japan can't improve its economic output through working its people harder...
Is Japan just San Francisco as a country? Japan is way nicer to live in than San Francisco. Way nicer. And way less expensive. Yeah, way cleaner. You mean like housing? No, because it's the opposite. Housing is cheap in Japan. It's just like... This is not necessarily... Like, what he's trying to say is, like, this may not be a good thing, but people buy houses in other countries expecting the value will go up so they have something to retire on. If you buy a house in America or Canada or whatever, the idea is that in 20 years it's worth a lot more and you can sell it and retire and downsize. But, like, in Japan, there's less likely that's going to happen. There's not much price appreciation, doesn't get bigger. So... it's more of a good that's used to live in, which is, I think, a better way to structure a society, but it deters people from living there.
Or bringing in more workers, the last option is to increase how much its workers can make in a given hour of work. Increasing worker productivity is really the best way to increase economic output, because the other two strategies obviously have eventual limits. People can only work so many hours, and an economy can only accommodate so many people before things get worse rather than better. Now, as we explored earlier, the best way to increase worker productivity is by giving them access to better tools and technology, and that's really where Japan has failed. So the next question is, how did they lose their technological lead? Japanese companies have been identified by economists as being incredibly conservative with any kind of new processors.
What? That doesn't make sense, because I know a Japanese company called Nintendo, and they were the first to get online this new wave of online gaming. They jumped in both feet head first, and they made sure their consumers could get awesome new online games as early as 2029. Okay, that's incredible. That's incredible, dude. They've been thinking with the future. Fax me your friend code. They knew that the way people wanted to play video games online is by finding a long friend code that they would share with their friends and being able to play laggy, adapter-based online games with two people. And I thought that was genius. That was foresight. There's nothing conservative about that.
The only reason they developed so quickly after the Second World War was because that represented such a big shake-up that they were effectively starting from scratch, and resistance from established norms hadn't had time to work its way into new industries yet. Now industries across the country are right back to it, and leadership, which is mostly quite old, still thinks the best way to do stuff is exactly how they've been doing it since their peak in the late 1980s.
Yeah,
Again,
good.
Japan is a country that's been living in the year 2000 since the 1970s. Ahead of their time then, but way behind it now.
It's a clever way to put it.
Japan has also had very low inflation, which means that companies have found it incredibly difficult to raise the prices of domestic products, which in turn makes it harder for them to create goods that are going to compete globally. The government of Japan has tried to fight this by basically doing what other governments around the world have been doing during COVID, only they've been doing it since the early 2000s. But even despite massive increases in the money supply, Japanese households just chose to save the money rather than consume or invest. That is looking to finally be starting to change, as countries around the world had to correct for the inflation their COVID stimulus measures caused.
They're saying this like a good thing. Again, I'm going to just give my take, and I'm not saying I have the correct one. I'm not saying anyone knows the 100% answer on this. But what it looks like is that Japan, if you guys don't know, Japan has the largest government debt in the world. They've printed more money compared to their GDP than any other company, by far. It's like 250% of their GDP. Their government has basically free borrowing, 0% or negative percent interest rates, and their government prints like crazy, okay? Insane debt. Absurd levels of debt. To the point where no one, like if the government wants to borrow money to buy a tank or whatever, they'll issue an IOU. That's what the U.S. government does, a treasury bond, an IOU. The Japanese government issues these IOUs and then prints money and buys them from themselves to basically just punt the problem till later. That's what they do, okay? Japan buys almost all of their own treasury bonds. America does it a little bit sometimes. I mean, a lot of countries do this, but Japan buys like 80% of their treasury bonds are bought by themselves. They completely own the market. But they have some incredible miracle. They have a lot of things that prevent them from getting inflation. I am not an expert on this. All I know is that dude, there's a lot of dogs barking. Let me actually 1 second. Can you check? What's going on with the dogs? Oh, just checking on the dogs. All right, they're good. Anyway, I'm back. So the point is that Japan, they've been printing all this fucking money and they haven't got inflation, which you should normally get if you have as much debt as Japanese government does and print as much money as they do. But they just have a lot of different things naturally creating deflation, which counterbalances it. Finally, they're starting to get some inflation. They're saying it like it's a good thing. And everyone's like, okay, well, now you can finally stop printing money, right? Now that you're finally got a stable amount of 2 to 3% inflation, you're going to stop printing money. And they haven't stopped at all. And like a lot of people that I read are like, they predicted this a while ago. They're like, hey, look, Japan keeps saying they're only printing money to get inflation back up to a normal level. And then they'll stop. But we think that's not going to happen. We think they're addicted to it and they're not, there's no way it's going to stop. And they haven't stopped. They're still doing it like crazy. And so there's a real chance that they just keep devaluing the yen and it makes it weaker and weaker. And the inflation starts rocketing past 2 to 3% and gets to become a real problem. And if you had a weak currency and high inflation, then your country's kind of fucked. And so that's, based on what I'm reading, is like a real risk of what's happening in Japan. So I don't see it as a good thing. Like they're in the sweet spot right now where it's 2 to 3% and it seems like, oh, we fixed it, everything's okay. But it feels like it's heading up to be worse. That's my worry and fear, that I would need more time before you say everything's all clear. I mean, their debt is like unpayable. If you really look into it, Japan's level of government debt is absurd. Japan
welcomed it because it's exactly what they've been after for years. Their
Tiger
companies
Beer, what's
had
up,
to,
man?
in the past, make public apologies for raising the price of their product by a few yen, the equivalent of a few cents. Now they have the opportunity to raise prices to levels that made more sense, so they could make a profit by making better products, rather than by cutting expenses and working their employees as hard as possible. The pandemic was just another shake-up. Obviously not one nearly on the scale of the Second World War, but it did shift the status quo enough for some significant changes to take place in a country that has otherwise been very resistant to change. Beyond all of that, even if it didn't create these circumstances directly, the Japanese economy will be the beneficiary of new technologies and shifts in global geopolitics. The elephant in the room is that China is now doing a lot of the manufacturing that Japan used to do. But with the rise of friendshoring and onshoring and the relative slide of Japanese wages and currency value, it's once again looking like a very competitive alternative, especially when considering the reputation that Japan now has for producing goods of high quality. The Nobel laureate economist Paul Krugman, potentially the most influential economist alive today, said that in the short term,
I don't like him.
isn't
I'm not going to say
everything,
anything.
but in the long term, it's almost everything. That was just a really cryptic way of saying that economists often spend too much time looking at output figures, either on a national or individual level, over the course of months or years, and those kinds of metrics won't have much of an impact on people's actual everyday lives. But over decades, the country needs to be aware of how productive its people are, because it determines everything from the quality of life they enjoy to their global competitiveness.
Sure.
Japan has maintained strong living conditions despite its stagnation, and it's even doing certain things in its economy arguably even better than the West. But if its productivity stalls endlessly, the world is going to grow up around it, and not only will it struggle to remain competitive, its own people could start to look for better opportunities abroad. Nobody can predict the future, least of all economists, but hopefully the projections are right and the economy of Japan can start maintaining long-term growth again for the good of its people and the global economy as a whole. In this video, we talked about the stagnation of Japan's
Okay. Why do people hate this guy so much? I thought the video was fine. Is it because he's Australian? I get it. His voice, his accent, you know, it's not English. It's not. But the video was fine. I don't think he said anything out of pocket. I don't think he said anything out of pocket, bro. I think it was like everything in there was credible and sourced. In this video, I haven't seen all his videos. That was fine though. Now again, I'm not in general, I'm not a huge fan of the knockoffs of this. I think he's one of the earliest to do this, but all of the stock footage business YouTube channels, it's like they like, they just read a Wikipedia article or something on a business event and they put stock footage over it, and then they take all the great stories and headlines, the thumbnails. Sometimes his videos are not very good, like very bad. It feels like you added some context to make it feel more informative. Yeah, maybe I did. It was interesting to me. I read a lot about Japan. But that video didn't seem like he said anything out of pocket. Good video about clickbait.
Can I tell you something?
Oh, the Veritasium video? We watched this. I think I reacted this and made a video about it, to be honest. Back in my React on main channel era. Guy kayaks to the most. Well, we're gonna watch House actually pretty soon. Cool video on AoE2 esports.
How awesome is it that we have?
I watched some of this. It was dope. Age of Empires 2 is the esport that won't die, bro. It's crazy. It's crazy how long it's been running, and they still have some of the fucking greatest competitors. AoE2 sick. Yeah, Viper and Doubt, and they did a tournament recently with a big prize pool, and bring back AoE 4. I retired on top, you know what I'm saying? They called me the all-time greatest AoE 4 player in history. I was the GOAT, and I just didn't need to do it. The $28 billion anime sweatshop industry? Ay, ay, ay. In a bad way. A little too long. It'll go over into house time. Seems interesting though. Great video on business school.
Oh,
I like this guy, this Good Work guy. Let's watch it. I actually got this recommended to me and I didn't watch it because I thought about watching it on stream. This good work guy, he's got a charm to him. And much better hair than me, to be honest. It's not fair. Let's see. Good work.
I have no doubt that you're capable of making me look like an idiot regardless of what I say today.
Where's this gonna be?
YouTube.
Do you think professors look at YouTube videos?
No.
Do you ever meet students who are unethical?
Wait, what is this called? It's called I Went to Business School. Okay.
Get a partner now. There's no one here. The dating is horrible. Don't do it.
The dating's bad, and MBA can be very helpful for that. It's not a degree for everybody.
There are too many MBAs being produced.
Today I woke up at 8 a.m., went to the gym until 9 a.m., took a shower.
This is actually really relevant because some of you are in business school, and when you graduate, you're going to go into a job market that is either good or bad. I'm not going to predict. Well, I'm going to predict my predictions, but let's say we don't know. If the job market is bad, a choice people often make is to go to grad school. They say, okay, the job market's bad. I'm gonna dip, and I'm gonna go to grad school. Let's see, here, for example, is a chart I was looking at today of the spike in number of students enrolling in graduate school in the recession of 2008. So you can see low enrollment and then a recession, and it goes high. It spikes. People just go to business school because they want to dodge the market. It's not even necessarily a terrible idea, but the problem is business schools are so expensive. A mistake people make? Yeah, it's a mistake people make. I mean, I think if you're going to a really expensive business school, it's tough to make the money back because it's. But if you can't find a job in your field and you think 4 years will get you there, I don't know. I don't want to speak. Everyone's situation is different. But this could happen in your life. I mean, I think realistically, a lot of people are going to be thinking about grad school in the near future, and so it's interesting to read about this.
Like quick but also sad lovemaking.
Because I was crying.
And I think it's a lot better for Europeans because grad school and the like are just way cheaper. I think the problem is American grad school is just so fucking ridiculously expensive, and it's like during time you theoretically could have a job, so you don't have the job, so you're losing the money you would make at the job, and you're spending money. So it's just like it's tough. It's like you really gotta fucking nail it out of the grad school to make up for it.
Like every week.
By the way, your apartment looks like a hotel where someone goes to kill themselves. Just saying.
You're probably wondering why Fred Nemode over here just made fun of what I thought was an immaculately decorated apartment. But to explain that, one has to traverse the long road back to the start of today's investigation.
So I took this guy's class. This is Scott Galloway. He's the one that wrote the book Algebra of Happiness that I recommend, and I took his class online while I was at NVIDIA. That's pretty good.
Just made fun of what I thought was an immaculately decorated apartment. But to explain that, one has to traverse the long road back to the start of today's investigation, which took us deep into the mysterious breeding ground where the next generation of business leaders are harvested. A dark rabbit hole where corporate larvae retreat to undergo metamorphosis. I'm talking, of course, about business school. The Masters in Business Administration, or MBA, has been the most popular graduate degree in America since 2010. Roughly 250,000 people are enrolled in MBA programs worldwide, with over 150,000 here in the US. However, only a tiny fraction of those students are enrolled in so-called top-tier MBA programs, stemming from universities like Harvard, Northwestern, Duke, and other stickers on the back of the Jeep Grand Cherokee that just cut you off. And yet, despite these programs' prestige, some critics wonder if the degree is too expensive, too exclusive, or just plain overrated. So what's up with business school? I spoke to students, experts, and exactly 2 bald men to investigate as thoroughly as I could. Our investigation began at the Darden School of Business in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I spoke with students to try to better understand life inside an MBA program.
MBAs, what do we think of them?
Interesting bunch.
How'd you end up here?
I was having a good time at my old job, but decided that I wanted to do something different. And business school seemed like the best and most expensive way to do it.
Why get an MBA?
I think it helps you understand all of the facets of running a business, see multiple people's perspectives, like accounting or legal or marketing.
And why is it necessary to know marketing's perspective? They're stupid. Has it ever happened where you hadn't done the reading and you were called on?
No.
Do you read the...
I don't think this video is very good. Let's watch the donkey video. Can we watch the donkey video again? I feel like this video, something about it just doesn't, I don't think the vibes are off. Am I right? I feel like the vibes are so off. It's not, I feel like we should watch more donkey, dude. Let's get that dunkster going.
Cases every time?
I do not.
The average Darden student, I think there are two kinds. You know, like people who went to prep school and who feel like they've always been the cool kids, but are really not the cool kids. You have that as like the average students. And then the other end is people who are actually cool kids, but don't think they're cool kids.
Maybe if there was a prep kid standing right next to you, you would say, no, I actually think he's very cool.
I would be frank to say no.
Okay. What's more useful to know for a life in business, ethics or golfing?
That's like a really hard question, actually. Probably golfing.
Today I woke up at 8 a.m., went to the gym until 9 a.m., took a shower, grabbed coffee at Darden, went to class. It started 10. I was late as usual, 10:10. 10 minutes late. I just came back from classes. I was gonna change clothes, go to play tennis.
It's basically Darden Friday, so it's Thursday, so I'm done for the week. I'm heading out to the West Coast for a concert.
What concert is this?
It's a Coldplay concert.
It was beginning to sound like business school was the absolute tits. The only problem was that one extremely boring thing kept coming up.
What industry did you work in prior to your MBA?
Consulting.
And what are you hoping to work in after your MBA?
Consulting.
Now, what are you hoping to get out of this MBA program?
Hopefully a job in consulting.
I would be going into consulting.
He's tall.
What clubs are you a part of?
I respect him for his height.
Club, and the second one is the Community Consultants of Darden.
So I'm going into consulting, but specifically for nonprofits and philanthropists.
What industry did you work in prior to Darden?
I was doing consulting before.
Got it. And are you hoping to enter consulting after the MBA program?
Yeah, different type of consulting. I used to do financial services consulting, and now I will do strategy consulting.
Mark, what did you do before business school?
I was a consultant.
And what do you hope
What
to
is
do?
consulting? It's like, let's say you're a business that, I don't know, sells fucking tires. Let's say you're Goodyear tires, and you think that you don't understand how to modernize for new technology, or you don't understand how to fire people because you have a lot of people to fire. Then you go to a company called McKinsey or one of the big consulting companies, and you say, please write me get overworked, underpaid grad students to write me a PowerPoint about why I should fire half my staff. And then they make it and they charge you an absurd amount. And then you have a consultant that told you to do this, so you can be like, well, I have to do it. Consultants are just companies that work for other companies and give them advice on how to do things. A lot of companies, especially for firing, for example, a lot of companies will know they have to fire people, but don't want to say that themselves. So they'll spend a lot of money hiring an outside consultant to milk them dry for a long time until they say, yeah, you got to fire people. And then they do. I'm oversimplifying it. I'm sure there's some good consultant somewhere. But in general, it's a pretty predatory, bad industry. I feel like they are often wrong. They often are wrong or obvious, and they just bleed companies dry, bro. I think they
after business school.
Definitely not consulting.
Finally, some diversity. Thanks, Mark. But I had to know, what was it about business school that prepared these people for a world in consulting?
What were some of the skills that you learned during your time here at Darden that you think are going to be applicable to this new job in consulting?
Being able to say something that sounds like you know what you're doing when maybe you don't.
Part of this is learning how to give an answer.
That is what it is. That is what it is. Because, I mean, here's the thing. Let's say you're like a 30-year veteran of this tire. I'm using a tire company. Maybe you make auto glass. It's a company that makes and does something. And then you're getting some grad student, some kid straight out of school to tell you how to run your business. And that kid almost certainly doesn't know tires like you do. They don't know shit. but you're paying them an absurd amount of money to be like, this is what you should do. Like, you need to use the internet more or whatever. And almost always it's either basic or wrong, right? So that's the problem with it. It's like, it just feels like an inherently, but at the end of the day, the only reason it exists is because of the either, I don't know, cowardice or or just general fearfulness of these business owners. Like, they have to pay McKinsey. They don't do it out of the goodness of their heart. They think they need the help, and then they go out. And it's like, they're not really getting the help, but they prey on a company's inability to look in a mirror. Exactly. That's what it is. A company is afraid to do things like if they need to make layoffs, or if they need to modernize their equipment, or if they need to, or if they're losing. Like, imagine they're just they're getting outcompeted. Like, if you're Goodyear Tires and Bridgestone is eating your lunch, and you're like, what do I do? And you can't figure it out, well, then it feels like you're doing something to go spend a lot of money on McKinsey, even if they tell you just obvious shit.
Or even if you know a quarter of the answer.
It sounds like you had a bad experience with consultants. No, I didn't. Twitch and NVIDIA didn't use consultants, but like, it was part of the culture at NVIDIA to shit on consultants. There's a very anti-consultant attitude at NVIDIA, which is like, if we need consultants, then we're fucking stupid as shit. So that is something like I was birthed in, or I don't know. That's what I was like. And I think they had a really bad experience with consultants. And it was like part of the culture there. So that is something that I like have in my
We'll never give a
DNA or whatever.
definitive answer, because then you'll be held accountable for it.
Trying to convince the client whatever you're saying is the right thing to do.
Indeed, consulting and other big buck industries like tech and finance are often what these MB baddies are aiming for. But the reality of tossing back
Didn't you consult? I didn't consult and like work at McKinsey. After I quit NVIDIA, I would get these calls from people from these they're like what are they called? These kind of firms. Anyway, they're like, hey, we'll pay you $200 an hour to talk to somebody about your time at NVIDIA. And I was like, how can I possibly say no to that? How can I possibly say no to that? And so there would be someone that calls you and they're just like, but all they did, I only did this like twice. And they would call you and they would literally want specifics on like how NVIDIA did things. How many employees did you have for marketing? How many were on social? How many were on web? How many were on email? How many were on, like, how did you structure it? They just want to copy, you know what I'm saying? And so that it wasn't like they wanted my deep advice on anything. They were just like, how did NVIDIA do it? But again, all the information they asked for was pretty surface level. It was like, yeah, we had fucking 8 employees, then we structured it, whatever, like this department. What is your mouse sensitivity, bro? Please.
Blanc at a Deloitte networking event is often less glamorous than one might think.
What was the recruiting process like for consulting? We've heard that it's very fun.
Fun is relative.
So basically they'll come and they'll go to a winery and then you stand in a circle and then you try to talk to one person even though there's 10 or 15 of you, and you try to get in one question and make an impression, and then you send a bunch of emails and have coffee chats.
Darkest time of my life. You say
miserable.
the same thing each time, and you have to do literally 100 if you're recruiting investment banking. You say, hi, I'm Kiana from the Philippines. The reason why I did an MBA was this. The reason why I wanted to go into investment banking is this. And I love your bank because of this. And it's the exact same thing at each point. Now imagine doing that 100 times.
No, thank you. It takes a lot weirder stuff than that to get me off. It was at this point that I realized talking to these silver-tongued consultant hopefuls wasn't going to get me anywhere. I needed to go straight to the top. Instead of talking to the people who learned the lessons at business school, I was going to meet the ones who teach them.
Beautiful day out.
Business school professors. I don't know any myself, so I googled famous business school professors and found this guy.
What's the point of business school?
Is that a genuine question? Yeah?
I have a theory of ties. When you realize they're a symbol of authority, and then you realize where they point, you have to see them as decorative.
This guy's kind of wild. This guy's kind of cool. What does he teach, bro?
And what
What happens if they're looking
It's
like
crazy that Karl Marx is now a business school professor. He kind of sold out, I gotta be honest with you. From his earlier days, I feel like he really... I mean, everyone's got to eat, I guess.
this? Is that?
Well, I don't know what it says about what they're pointing to.
Adam Grant is a New York Times bestselling author, organizational psychologist, serial TED Talker, former magician, and current professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. And Ed Freeman is a professor at Darden who I think just made a dick joke.
I think the point of business school is to teach people to be better at running businesses, maybe. And by better, I mean both more effective and also more responsible.
Back in the day, I would say the focus of the MBA was on how to make money. I come along, I teach ethics, and that's a very small piece of it. Now, it's a much bigger part of the MBA.
How have you seen business school evolve?
I think in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, we actually saw far fewer bankers show up here. And we also saw fewer students want to become bankers. That means we have probably a few more consultants.
Consulting.
Also a lot more students going into tech and entrepreneurship. But also a lot more public service, which I think has enriched the classroom a ton.
You mentioned it would be good to see less bankers, correct?
I don't know that I want fewer bankers. I would like more bankers who are trying to figure out how to build a financial system that serves people, as opposed to just saying, all right, I want to become a banker and maximize my own income. I've had students walk into my office and say, my goal is to become as rich as humanly possible. Can you give me advice about how to do that?
Why is ethics necessary in business?
And there's this
At
old
least they're
story
direct.
of business.
At least
This
they're
is just about
direct.
the money. It's just about money.
All right, I'm starting in 3 minutes. I'm starting in 3 minutes.
But it's time for us believers. Well, he messed up, but I have no fear. Believers rise, believers. A streamer equal person.
Hey, Truck, I ordered drumsticks ice cream. You ordered it? We eating good tonight, roof. All right, man. Congrats. Hey, yeah, I'm happy for you. You got some fucking drumsticks ice cream. I guess you ordered it, which is crazy. And you're going to just have a good fucking roof night. I'm happy. Honestly, I'm happy for you. To be quite honest, I am. Ice cream is so good. I'm losing this bet. No, you're not losing this bet. I'm starting in 2 minutes now. In 2 minutes, I click this button, I hit new game, and we fucking power through, dude. I love Portal 2. I love Portal 1. This is fan-made, so how hard could it be? How did this game get approved? What do you mean, approved? I don't know. They just made it. It's not. They're not charging money for it. It was free. Make sure you. Sorry, what? It's a mod, not a game. It's a game, bro. This shit's a game. Fan made like Monkey Ball Gaiden. That's I guess that's true. Try this for Nintendo and see what happens. He's got a point. Although I get, Bytes, who made some of the Monkey Ball mods, made a Mario 64. What do you call it? Like procedurally generated Mario 64, where you can play Mario 64 and the level just keeps building itself in front of you, and you just keep moving. It looks really cool. I might try to play that. Doubters for the win. Shut the fuck up, Doubters. All right? We're starting in now 1 minute. 1 minute till the timer goes off, and I unleash absolute hell upon these puzzles. Believers rise, believers. Doubters can catch these hands. That's what I'm saying, bro. That's what I'm fucking saying. How long is it supposed to take? 8 hours was what I was quoted. I was quoted that it's like at an average pace, 8 hours. Count me as a doubter, dude. So you're a shoo-in. We're starting. We're starting. Hit the timer. Wait. Start the timer. Okay. Whew, okay, now quick rest, okay? Because have your mind centered and zen is the most important part of solving any puzzle. So here's what I want. I want no backseating, but I also want no fucking front seating. Do you know what I'm saying? Enough for the yap, dude. Oh, he can't solve it. Pepe laugh, Pepe laugh, Pepe laugh. No, okay? Support, focus, good mental energy. Starting already? Okay, chapter 1, the human resource, play. I guess my only concern is, what if it's like Portal 2 where the puzzles aren't so hard, but there's just so much dialogue? Oh, hello. Can I move? Nope, cannot. Like what if there's like cutscenes and stuff? Already behind on time and it's 10 seconds in. Shut the fuck up. Spooky.
I thought maybe you could use a babysitter.
Actually, I've got her in daycare downstairs.
They have well-designed homes. They do have high rates of sexual harassment.
Tight budget. Strict of a burden, or at the very least something that is ultimately disposable, like a fancy car. And try to fight this by basically doing what other governments around the world have been doing during COVID. Prices of domestic products, which in turn makes it harder for them to create goods that are going to compete globally. The government of Japan has tried to fight this logical lead. Japanese companies have been identified is to increase how much its workers can make in a given hour of work. Increasing worker productivity is really the best way.
You mean like housing? No, because it's the opposite. Housing is cheap in Japan. It's just like this is not necessarily, what he's trying to say is like this may not be a good thing. People buy houses in other countries expecting the value will go up, so they have something to retire in the downside. But like, wait.
Even workers who are able to make it in
Brazil as a country,
Japan's great is because it's tiny and totally lacking the luxuries that most people enjoy in even developed.
I have an oil slick button like a cartoon character and force teachers and other hardworking